Part 22. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 211. The Gu family got up early the next day. Brother Shen sat at the dining table with two huge dark circles under his eyes. Zhang Yuniang looked at the situation and asked with concern, "What's going on? Didn't you get a good rest last night?" Brother Shen didn't know what to say for a moment. But Gu Zhao had already spoken. Brother Shen has been tossing and turning in bed all night, unable to sleep. He may have something on his mind. When Brother Shen heard this, he almost carried it away in one breath. It was obviously Gu Zhao who was snoring and kicking someone, so how could it be that he had something on his mind? Niu sighed and said, "Brother Shen, no matter how worried you are, you can't delay your sleep." Brother Shen looked aggrieved, but he still refrained from speaking ill of Gu Zhao. However, Gu Mingda looked at his face and said, "Chang Feng, life is short. Say what you have to say. Don't hold it back and you will only wrong yourself." Brother Shen's name is Chang Feng. This is the first time that an elder has said such words to him. Or maybe it means that although he comes from a wealthy family, few elders pay so much attention to his emotions. After Shen Changfeng hesitated for a moment, he finally said, "How old is a Zhao? Why is he snoring so loudly?" Gu Zhao touched his nose. "Is it big?" "I don't know." Gu Yan, who once shared a room with him, nodded. "It's really big, don't you know it?" Niu glanced at her brothers strangely and asked belatedly, "So Brother Shen couldn't sleep because it was too noisy?" Shen Changfen nodded. "I'm sorry, Niu shouldn't misunderstand that you have something on your mind." Niu apologized to him quickly. After Gu Zhao was stunned for a moment, he also apologized, "Brother Shen, just wake me up when I snore. I fall asleep very quickly and kept you awake all night. What should I do?" Shen Changfeng liked the two children and would not blame him for such a trivial matter. Instead, he said, "Ah Zhao, you better find a doctor to take a look at your snoring problem. You are such a villain." Then the snoring almost brought the roof off. "I heard an old doctor say that snoring too much is not a good thing." Gu Mingda and Zhang Yuniang didn't think this was a big deal at first, but when Shen Changfeng said this, they felt a sudden change in their hearts. "Okay, thank you Changfeng for the reminder. We will send Azao to see the doctor another day," Zhang Yuniang said. Shen Changfeng added, "It just so happens that I know a good old doctor who worked in Taiyuan Hospital. He lives in Baiyun town. You can drop by to see him today." The Gu family did not expect such an unexpected surprise, that they could actually ask the old lady doctor to see him. "Would it be displeasing to the old doctor if I take the liberty to come to the door?" Zhang Yuniang was worried that she had lost her etiquette. Shen Changfen waved his hand and said, "It's okay. This old doctor watched my mother grow up and watched me grow up. He won't care about this." Shen Changfen didn't think this was a big deal at all. He had not slept well at night and must have a full meal in the morning. In fact, the Gu family just had an ordinary breakfast, steamed buns, flour rolls, and porridge, but this kind of atmosphere where the family gathered together to have breakfast happily, and did not follow the rules of eating and sleeping, and chatting lively, made him feel very enjoyable. "Don't be so stressed. Even if you don't pass the exam, my dad will teach you at home," Gu Mingda comforted the nervous Gu Yan. Gu Yan nodded, but his face was not much relaxed. Even though his family comforted him many times, he was still very nervous when facing the exam. Gu Mingda had said everything he needed to say, and for a moment he didn't know how to persuade him. After breakfast, the Gu family was about to get on the carriage. Shen Changfeng looked at the sky above his head and suddenly said, "It's probably going to rain today." Although the Gu family could not tell that the sky was going to rain, they knew that Shen Changfeng was good at observing the weather, so they immediately rearranged their travel arrangements. "My parents don't let them go out when they are old. Niu is too young, so she stays at home, and Xiru stays too, so that she can be taken care of, Zhang Yuniang said. Gu Mingde was about to nod. But Niu Niu said, Mom, I want to accompany my elder brother in the exam. I will wear a raincoat and a bamboo hat obediently. I promise not to get caught in the rain. I can also add another piece of clothing. Just let me go. When Niu Niu said this, Zhang Yuniang and Gu Mingde were reluctant to reject her. Thinking that this child had always been well-behaved and sensible, they nodded. Compared with Niu Niu's impatient wait, Gu Zhao hated having to go. Since it's going to rain, I'd better stay at home. Gu Zhao didn't want to see a doctor or take the dregs of bitter medicine. He added, with such a heavy rain, it's easy to get wet when going out of the city, and it's the same when going to school. I'm snoring. I'm not in good health, so I can't get wet in the rain. The implication is that I neither want to go to the doctor nor go to school. Gu Mingde looked down and said, if you don't want to go, then stay at home and write 100 big words. Gu Zhao didn't expect that he had escaped from going to school and had not escaped from writing big characters. His face suddenly fell and he said, then I'd better go with you. After preparing the rain gear and leaving Lu Xiru at home to help take care of the old couple, the rest of the Gu family got on the carriage and left the city. Zhang Yuniang took her 3 children in one carriage, and Gu Mingde took Shen Changfen in another carriage. Niu Niu asked Gu Yan, brother, why are you so nervous? Gu Yan didn't hide anything from his sister, and whispered, this opportunity is rare, and I don't know how hard Dad worked to get it. I'm afraid of screwing up. I always feel that my knowledge is shallow. Gu Yan is still the same Gu Yan who wants to wait until he is completely sure before taking action. He doesn't want to disappoint his family. He wants to be a good example for his younger brothers and sisters. Niu Niu sighed and said, brother, will Dad disown you because you failed the exam? Gu Yan shook his head, of course not. Niu Niu continued, in our eyes, the most important thing is you, not the exam. Gu Yan was stunned when he heard this. He regarded this opportunity as more important than anything else, but forgot that he was far more important than his studies. Gu Yan said his inner thoughts truthfully, entering Baiyun Academy is equivalent to half a foot to become a Juren. If I miss this opportunity, will I never be able to make achievements in the imperial examinations in the future? I will feel that I am not worthy of being your big brother and have not set a good example for you. Niu Niu tilted her head and said, big brother, Dad, and Mom didn't say that you must make achievements in the imperial examinations. Even if you fail this exam, even if you don't achieve anything in the imperial examinations in the future, you are still the best big brother. Zhang Yuniang said at the right time, Ian, your sister is right. You are the most important. We hope you can have a good future. Letting you take the imperial examination is because we are afraid that you will suffer in the future. You are always afraid of disappointing our expectations, but we never gave birth to you to change our family status or bring honor to our family. You are steady and sensible, and you are already a good son who far exceeds our expectations. You have done very well. Don't put all the weight of your life on this exam. Even if you fail this time, it does not mean that you will fail in the imperial examination in the future. Even if the imperial examination does not go well in the future, it does not mean that you have only this one way to go. We can find a way together and find a way for you. When Gu Yan heard these words, he suddenly felt as if he had broken free from the cage he had set for himself and suddenly saw a glimpse of daylight. First update. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 212. After the carriage swayed on the road for an hour, it finally stopped. Baiyun Academy is located in Baiyun Town, a suburb of Beijing. There were not many people here originally, but since the Baiyun Academy was built, the number of people gradually increased. The deserted road in front of the academy became a street, and many houses were added around the street, slowly forming a small town. The entrance examination of Baiyun Academy is held once every 3 months. It is said to be an entrance examination, but in fact it is also a monthly examination of the college. Children who want to enroll take the exam together with college students, and those with excellent scores can enroll. Students in the college who don't work hard may also be eliminated due to poor scores and lose their qualifications to study. Even so, there are still not many people who are qualified to register for the exam, which takes place every 3 months. Shen Changfeng and Gu Mingde were riding in a carriage. Gu Mingde closed his eyes and took a nap after getting in the carriage, which made Shen Changfeng feel relieved. After getting off the carriage, Shen Changfeng immediately asked Niuniu, looking at it, "Your elder brother doesn't seem so nervous anymore." Shen Changfeng still remembered that Gu Yan had a pale face and was restless while eating. He was obviously too nervous. Unexpectedly, he returned to normal just after riding in the carriage. Niuniu replied, "Because the eldest brother has figured it out." "What do you want to understand?" Shen Changfeng was confused. Niuniu answered him in her own way, "Even if the eldest brother fails the exam, he is still our favorite eldest brother and a good son for our parents." When Shen Changfeng heard this, he couldn't help but feel envious. His father didn't seem to like him no matter what he did. "How can I make my father like me so much?" Shen Changfeng said softly. Niu still had the look of hating iron but not steel and said, "I told you it was your father's fault. Why do you always feel that you are not lovable? As long as we children do not do bad things, we should be loved by our families. If you don't like us, why should you be born?" Shen Changfeng looked at Niu with admiration in his heart. Niu was still an adopted daughter, so she could have such reasonable thoughts. He just thought of mentioning such words to his father, but he felt that he couldn't say it out loud. Niu said like an adult, "If you don't dare to say it, I will go and say it for you." The way Shen Changfeng looked at Niu turned into a starry eye looking at the eldest sister's head. What he didn't dare to say, someone else dared to say it. "You didn't give birth to me just to bring glory to your family, so I want to eat a candied horse on a stick, so that's what I should do." Gu Zhao pointed at the old man selling candied horse on the side and said confidently, with his belly pointed out. In this case, Zhang Yuniang would naturally be ruthlessly suppressed. "It's too sweet to eat. I can buy you something else to eat." Zhang Yuniang didn't press her too hard after all. Gu Zhao's requirements were also very low, that's okay. Zhang Yuniang not only bought food for Gu Zhao, but also asked Niu and Shen Changfeng to pick out snacks. Shen Changfeng was embarrassed to take it and said, "Auntie, I'm not a child anymore. I can buy something myself if I want to eat." Zhang Yuniang said, "You are still a child before you get married. From now on, you have to call me master's wife. Just like your own children, you don't have to be restrained." Shen Changfeng felt anxious, knowing that Zhang Yuniang treated him as her own child, so he picked out a piece of Suiyun crispy that Niu wanted to eat, and then secretly shared it with Gu Zhao and Niu. The old doctor lived in the town, and the group of people walked along the streets of the town and arrived in just 1 cup of tea. The gate to the yard is open, and there are many herbs drying inside. People passing by can smell the strong aroma of herbs. Because the old doctor never revealed his identity, the neighbors only thought he was a country doctor. Old Yantu, are you at home?" Shen Changfeng shouted towards the room. Old Dr. Yan walked out of the room slowly with a gloomy face. "Keep your voice down, I'm deaf." Shen Changfeng chuckled, and then scurried in like a monkey, whispering around old Dr. Yan for a while. "You brat, you will always find trouble for me." Lao Yantu laughed and scolded, but did not care about Shen Changfeng, and then said to the Gu family who were still waiting outside the courtyard gate, "Come in." The Gu family stepped in. "Wow, there are so many bugs." Gu Zhao's eyes lit up as he looked at the dried bug corpses in the yard. Gu Mingde quickly held down this brat's hand, and then picked him up, fearing that his hands would cause harm. Gu Zhao didn't feel anything was wrong. He lay on his father's shoulder and still looked around at the medicinal materials. The child is snoring, let me see what's going on first. Dr. Yan asked Gu Zhao to stretch out his wrist to check his pulse, and then asked carefully. This pulse diagnosis took a long time, not only asking Gu Zhao, but also Gu Mingde and Zhang Yuniang. The couple couldn't answer many questions, and even Niu Niu helped answer them. The old doctor frowned and pondered for a long time, and then said, "It's not bad as I guessed." Gu Mingde and Zhang Yuniang suddenly became nervous again and asked, "Doctor, what is wrong with my son? Is it difficult to cure?" The old doctor shook his head and said, "It's not difficult to cure, but there are a lot of problems." The couple breathed a sigh of relief after hearing this. The old doctor continued to explain, in addition to snoring, this kid is hyperactive, has trouble staying still, is distracted, has troubles and fever, and has night sweats and enuresis. When he said this, Gu Zhao jumped up anxiously, "I can't pee in bed several times a month." "Ha ha ha. Why do you still wet the bed at such an old age?" Shen Changfeng couldn't hold back and laughed. Old Dr. Yan didn't give him face and said, "What's so funny about you? Didn't you wet the bed until you were 8 years old?" Shen Changfeng was like a chicken with its neck pinched. "Old Yan, how can you expose my shortcomings so easily?" After bullying him, old Dr. Yan felt satisfied and continued, "Should this liver and kidney yin deficiency be treated together?" Gu Mingden nodded and said, "Of course." Old Dr. Yan picked up a pen and paper beside him and began to write a prescription. Bamboo shavings, tangerine peel, clematis, silkworm. He muttered softly while prescribing. Gu Zhao got excited again when he heard this. "Silkworm, I have memorized it in Cheneng's herbal classic." Children are always like this, they get very excited when they hear a familiar word. The old doctor uttered a sigh. "Wow, you are still reciting this, recite a few sentences for me to hear." Bombyx petridicatus, tastes salty and non-toxic, it is the disease of silkworms and the dead ones are used as medicine. Gu Zhao recited loudly, and he was so enthusiastic that he looked like he was asked by the teacher to answer a question he was good at in class. Old Dr. Yan couldn't help but nod and said, "You recited it word for word. You are a little kid, why don't you read the 4 books and 5 classics? Why do you recite this? Do you want to be a doctor?" Gu Zhao touched the back of his head and said, "My father asked me to recite it, and I like to recite it myself." "Then let me ask you about bamboo. How is it recorded in the pharmacopoeia?" the old doctor asked with a smile. Gu Zhao shook his head, "I only recited the worms." The old doctor was stunned when he heard this. Gu Mingde was such a smart man. He had originally thought about training his youngest son to become a doctor. Seeing the opportunity, he immediately said, "Old doctor, you don't know that my son has always loved insects, is familiar with their habits, and is good at raising them." The old doctor's eyes suddenly lit up. The second update. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 213. Old Dr. Yan suppressed the joy in his heart and finally filled out the prescription. Then he grabbed Gu Zhao and asked, "Kid, are you really good at raising insects?" Gu Zhao tilted his head and thought for a moment, then said, "I should be considered good at it. None of the bugs I raise will bite me." Dr. Yan asked casually, "What kind of insects have you raised?" "Crickets, ants, dung beetles." Every time he recited one more words, the faces of the others became uglier. Until he kept talking more and more outrageously, "Scorpions, centipedes." Zhang Yuniang turned pale and asked, "When did you raise these things? You didn't even tell me." Gu Zhao took out the small jar he carried with him and brought it to his mother. I've been raising it for a while, didn't I tell you? Maybe I forgot. Zhang Yuniang looked at her son's honest expression and looked at some kind of multi-jointed poisonous insect crawling in the small jar in the evildoer's hand, and felt the hairs on her back stand up. Where do you usually put this thing? Do you carry it with you? When you sleep, Zhang Yuniang asked. It's not like I keep it with me all the time, but we do stay together when we sleep. When Zhang Yuniang heard this, her hands were trembling. She pointed at her unlucky son, not knowing what to say. But Shen Changfeng was the real victim. He was so frightened that he jumped on the chair. I slept with the bugs all night. Why didn't you tell me earlier? If I had known this, I would rather sleep on the ground than share the same bed with you. Bed. Gu Zhao carefully closed the lid and said, Brother Shen, what are you afraid of? Xiao Wu doesn't bite, I will discipline him. Hearing that Gu Zhao even gave the bug a name, everyone felt like their scalps were going to explode with such an intimate gesture. Only Dr. Yan clapped his hands vigorously. Okay. Shen Changfeng frowned at him and asked, what's good? Old Yantu, I'll stuff poisonous insects into the place where you sleep, and see if you can still laugh. However, old Dr. Yan did not take it seriously and said cheerfully, if you dare to stop me, I will also dare to complain to your mother. He handed the prescription to Gu Mingda and refused Gu Mingda's move to pay for the consultation. I like this kid, can you let him help me raise bugs for a while, the old doctor said. Gu Mingda had already guessed this outcome, but he still said, he still doesn't recognize all the characters and is still in school. I'm afraid he can only come here every now and then. Gu Zhao was very anxious when he heard this and said, Dad, let me do it. I can learn to read slowly. Gu Zhao actually longed to go to school and raise bugs here every day. But Gu Mingda glared and said, raising insects is not something you can do for a lifetime. I don't expect you to take the imperial examination in the future. At least you can learn a few more words and be a bookkeeper. Don't even be able to support a wife. Old Dr. Yan heard what he meant on the spot, but it was rare for him to meet someone who was so good at raising insects. After all, he was reluctant and could only say, Ms. Gu, this kid is really talented in the imperial examination, get a reputation. Gu Mingda shook his head and told the truth, his mind is not on studying. Old Dr. Yan said, since you want to find a future for this child, I do have a future here, but I'm afraid he won't like it. Gu Mingda knew what the old doctor was going to say, but he didn't skimp on the process. Please make it clear, sir. I'm old and haven't had an apprentice for many years, but I really need a medicine boy who is good at raising insects. If you are willing, you can let this child become my teacher. I can't guarantee that I can teach him to become a famous doctor. It shouldn't be a big problem to be an ordinary doctor and open a pharmacy or medical clinic in the future. This was what Gu Mingda was waiting for, and he turned to look at Gu Zhao, come quickly and kowtow. After becoming your master, you can raise bugs as you like, as long as you don't bring them home to scare people. When Gu Zhao heard that he could raise insects, he quickly knelt down and banged his forehead louder than anyone else. Good boy, get up quickly. Old Dr. Yan helped the person up with a smile. After Gu Zhao succeeded in becoming a master, he turned around and asked Gu Mingda stupidly, Dad, if I become a master, do I no longer have to go to school? I won't have to study or write big characters in the future. Gu Mingda nodded slightly. Gu Zhao's face was filled with joy. Gu Mingda added, your future studies will be under the control of your master. Old Dr. Yan said with a smile, the way I teach my disciples is very stupid. If you study more and watch more, you will naturally master it. Gu Zhao thought he could get rid of the fate of writing big characters and was even happier. Unexpectedly, Dr. Yan reached out and pointed at the full bookshelf on one side, copy these books first, and tell me if you don't understand anything. If the handwriting is illegible, copy it again. Gu Zhao had a sad face and wished he could rush out of the door on the spot. Why did he get out of the fire pit and into the wolf's den? Studying in school was not so hard. Old Dr. Yan obviously didn't want to serve Chongzi anymore. If possible, you can let him study with me today. Naturally, Gu Mingde would not refuse this hard-won opportunity. If it were not for some mistake, how could his family arrange for Gu Zhao to become a disciple of an old imperial doctor? I listen to you, old man. I will find someone to plan my life later, and then I will have a formal apprenticeship ceremony. What do you think of this? Gu Mingde asked. Although the old doctor didn't say anything about the apprenticeship ceremony, Gu Mingde couldn't just fool around with it, so the more he paid attention to it, the better. When the old doctor heard this, he did not refuse and said, "You decide the date, but this child has to stay today." He didn't want to serve bugs for a day. Everyone laughed, only Gu Zhao cried and said, "My clothes and valuables are all at home. Can I come over in a few days?" Gu Zhao didn't want to enter hell mode so soon. Gu Mingde said, "Don't worry, I have my own arrangements. I still keep insects in my house." Zhang Yuniang took a deep breath and said, "Send the insects together." She really didn't want to keep this unfortunate child at home for a day. Daddy just sent me to a private school in the city. Now I'm moving to another place. Isn't that a waste of money? This is too wasteful. I'd better go back to the city to study and come over every now and then. It's hard for Gu Zhao's not-so-smart little head to come up with such an excuse. Gu Mingde stared at his bastard son and said, "For your future, losing this little money is nothing. Even if the loss is several times more, it is worth it." Gu Zhao cried, "I am only 7 years old. What should I do if I miss home at night? I have never left you. Lu Yu will accompany you. We are relieved to have him take care of you. Your master also said that you can go home for 1 day every 10 days. It's not like you will never go back." Gu Mingde forcibly pried open his son's hand that was holding his trouser leg. Gu Zhao could no longer find a reason to refuse, so he could only find a corner to hide pitifully. He held Nyuniu's hand and emphasized over and over again, "My dear, if there is anything delicious at home, you must remember to send me a portion. Brother is counting on you." First update. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 214. Gu Zhao didn't feel uncomfortable for long. Because the old doctor urged him to take up his post and arranged his work in the shortest possible time, copying books in the morning, identifying medicinal materials in the afternoon, and serving bugs the rest of the time. After careful calculation, Gu Zhao didn't even have a moment of neutrality. Gu Zhao, with his small face, was stared at and copied by the old doctor in front of his family. The others stayed with him for a while, then got up and left after counting that the time was almost up. Before leaving, Shen Changfeng glanced at the medicinal herbs drying in the yard and said, "Old man Yan, it's going to rain soon. Do you still want the medicinal herbs?" The old doctor also knew that Shen Changfeng was good at observing the weather. Just as he was about to get up and run out, he suddenly turned back, slipped Gu Xiaodi up and said, "Come here and help." The Gu family wanted to come together to help, but the old doctor blocked him and said, "Let the child do it. He should be familiar with various medicinal materials as soon as possible." The Gu family listened to the advice. The old man lived alone in Baiyun town. On weekdays, only an elderly woman came to help with cooking and cleaning. Gu Zhao didn't have much work to do. The group of people returned to the outside of Baiyun Academy and continued to wait. Without Gu Zhao, my ears suddenly became quiet. "I feel a little uncomfortable," Zhang Yuniang whispered to her husband. "Every time I take my little son out, he feels like he has a stomach like a bottomless pit. Anyway, whatever he encounters on the street is basically what he likes to eat. He doesn't make a fuss, he just keeps pestering him." Want. Gu Mingda comforted him, looking on the bright side, the children will be separated sooner or later, so let's treat it as early as possible. Zhang Yuniang lowered her head and glanced at Niu Niu. It was okay that her sons were away from home. There was no need to worry about their suffering. However, if her daughter got married and left home in the future, she would not be at ease. She was always afraid that her children would be bullied by her husband's family. When pedestrians held up umbrellas, Guyan came out of Bayun Academy. Non-candidates are not allowed to enter, and most of the candidates do not bring umbrellas. Guyan held an umbrella and sent a young man of about the same age to his family. Then he and the Gu family took several umbrellas and went back, bringing out the other children. Run slowly, don't get caught in the rain, Zhang Yuniang reminded. Guyan responded and rushed into the rain again until he took out all the children. The corners of his clothes were also soaked. Zhang Yuniang looked at him distressedly and said, "You are required to run around everywhere. The academy cannot watch so many people getting wet in the rain. We will have to arrange for someone to pick them up and drop them off later." Guyan chuckled and said, "I think they were anxious and didn't think much about it." The Gu family didn't ask Guyan how he did in the exam, but he took the initiative and said, "I tried my best to answer the exam. If I didn't pass, it's because my skills are not as good as others, so I have nothing to regret." Guyan is now relatively relaxed, and his family members are relieved to see him like this. Don't think about these things anymore. First drink a bowl of hot soup to ward off the cold. Zhang Yuniang brought a bowl of hot soup to her son. The place they were staying at now was a restaurant outside Bayun Academy. Since they got a seat early, most of the dishes they ordered were served, so that Guyan could eat ready-made. After Guyan took the soup bowl, he didn't drink it immediately. Instead, he looked around and asked, "Where's Xiao?" After learning that his younger brother had become a disciple, Guyan was also very happy for him. "If you pass the exam this time, you and your brother will be able to take care of you in Bayun town in the future. Dr. Yan's grandson is about the same age as you, and it is said that he is also studying in the academy," Zhang Yuniang said with a smile. In his heart, Guyan was already very sure about passing the exam, but he was always modest and did not talk too much. Tonight, the whole family will go to the Zhuangyuan building for dinner, and Chang Feng will not be absent. This is to celebrate Ian's exam, Gu Mingda said. The Zhuangyuan building is a restaurant as famous as the Ziwixian building in Beijing. Gu Mingda booked a private room in advance. When Shen Changfeng heard Gu Mingda call his name specifically, he felt a sense of joy that became a member of his own family, and said, "Okay, then I'll go home and rest after dinner." He was really afraid of Gu Zhao's room, maybe there were some poisonous insects that hadn't been cleaned out. Guyan frowned slightly and reminded, "Dad, the exam results will not be released until 3 days later, and I may not be able to get into Bayun Academy." Gu Mingda said, "This is not to celebrate that you passed the exam, but to celebrate that you finally broke through the shackles and took your first exam." Guyan was slightly startled. He saw his father fail many times and became afraid of exams, but he didn't expect that his father was always watching but did not force him. Gu Mingda patted his son on the shoulder and said, "Having the courage to take that step is already very impressive. Success and failure are all human nature." Guyan nodded vigorously, cupped his hands and said, "Don't worry, father, my son has taken note of it." Niu Niu waited patiently for them to finish, and then asked with a troubled face, "We are having dinner at Zhuangyuan building tonight, won't third brother go?" The little girl still kept Gu Zhao's instructions firmly in mind, and she was always thinking about anything delicious. After Shen Changfeng heard this, Dr. Yan forced Gu Zhao to stay today. Gu Mingda would probably not bring him back to the capital, but unexpectedly, Gu Mingda said, "We will wait in Bayun town until the evening and then return. Then we will take him back with us. If we send him back tomorrow morning, we will only have to suffer for him." Gu Mingda talked about the tossing he had with his son in an understatement. Shen Changfeng didn't appreciate Gu Zhao's hard work, but felt very touched. The Gu family really valued family reunion. After lunch, the rain outside stopped. I have asked the owner of the restaurant. There is a peach blossom forest to the south. There is a Baiyun temple behind the peach blossom forest. We can go there for a visit, Gu Mingda suggested. When everyone left the restaurant, they did not notice that two old gentlemen in long gowns were staring at Gu Yan, who was holding his sister's hand on the street, sitting by the window on the second floor. He has an umbrella and he doesn't forget to take care of others. He is a child with a good character, the long-faced old man praised. After hearing this, the round-faced old man said, "Do you like this child? This child is here to take the exam for our academy. If you agree to stay, I will decide on this disciple and give it to you." The long-faced old man has not yet made up his mind whether to stay in the academy to teach or return to his hometown. Hearing this, he said, "Just a good character does not necessarily mean good aptitude." The round-faced old man said, "Then wait, if he passes the exam, you stay, how about it?" The long-faced old man hesitated. The round-faced old man rolled his eyes, held his hand tightly, and said, "Come on, don't hang on to one tree. You are free these days, why don't you mark the papers together and see if there are any good candidates?" The long-faced old man really liked Gu Yan. When he heard this, he said, "Your academy is taking exams, why should I interfere?" But his steps were light and he was pulled into the academy by his old friend. The second update. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 215. Brother, the peach blossoms are really blooming, and they are blooming together with the plum blossoms. It's amazing. Nayuni pointed at the fresh and delicate flowers on the tree with raindrops on them, her face full of excitement. She wanted to recite a poem, but she couldn't think of one for a while. Gu Yan nodded, and pointed at the best one. "Do you want it? Brother will pick it for you." Nayuni hesitated for a moment, shook her head, and said, "Does a flower represent a fruit?" Gu Yan said, "That may not be the case." Nayuni was stunned and said, "Isn't it like that? I heard the old people often say that flowers bear fruits." Gu Yan said, "There are more flowers than fruits. There is also a peach tree behind our house. Every year, there are countless flowers, but there are a certain number of peaches." Nayuni nodded, not quite understanding. In the past, in the village, the fruits of the peach trees were gone in a split by the children in the family, and there was not enough to eat. Nayuni nodded firmly and said to the peach tree, "Then I'd rather not have the flower. What if this flower happens to bear fruit? It would be a pity if I pick it by mistake." "You are so interesting, little kid. What you said is exactly the same as my wife." A handsome middle-aged man in his 40s, wearing navy blue clothes, suddenly appeared behind the brother and sister. Gu Yan immediately grabbed his sister's hand, and saw his parents enjoying the flowers not far away. The middle-aged man didn't seem like a bad person. He calmed down and didn't stop his sister from chatting with him. Niu looked up and asked, "Mr. Big, are you here to enjoy the flowers too? Why do you look unhappy?" The middle-aged man heard this and looked at the overflowing sea of flowers. A trace of sadness flashed in his eyes and he said, "I came here to try my luck." Niu looked around in confusion and then said, "Try your luck? You don't look short of money." Although the man was dressed simply, he looked rich and noble, and he looked like someone who was not short of money. "Haha, little girl, do you think trying your luck is picking up money?" the man squatted down and asked with a smile. Niu nodded honestly. "Our family was poor before, so I looked forward to trying my luck often, but now my family is very rich, so we don't need to try our luck anymore," Niu said in a baby voice. The man was a little curious and asked, How did your family become rich? By trying my luck, Niu Niu said as a matter of course. The man couldn't help laughing and asked, how did you get lucky? Can you teach me? Niu Niu sighed and said, Mr. Big, you look very smart. The man was suddenly praised and felt a little happy. But Niu Niu continued, you are so smart, why can't you figure it out? Luck is a matter of chance, not learning. If someone else said this, the man would probably be angry, but the one who spoke was a 6-year-old girl. She was still childish and looked very cute with an attitude of why can't you figure this out? The middle-aged man laughed, but suddenly laughed more and more bitterly, saying, it seems that my luck is not good enough. Niu Niu looked at him like this and couldn't help being infected by the bitter atmosphere surrounding him. In the end, she was merciful and asked, how much silver do you want to pick up when you come here to try your luck? The man shook his head and said, I don't lack money. I just want to meet my wife here. Niu Niu tilted her head and said, strange, isn't your wife with you? Where did she go? I don't know, the man said. Niu Niu asked, did you make her angry, so she won't see you? The man shook his head and said, I hope so. Niu Niu pointed to a pair of people admiring flowers side by side not far away and said, that's my parents. They have a good relationship and are always inseparable. When Niu Niu pointed over, Gu Mingda and his wife happened to look over here and smiled at the children. The man was also envious and asked again, how many children do your parents have? 4 children, I have 3 brothers, Niu Niu said. The man looked at Guyan on the side and said, you have a good brother. Guyan held his sister's hand from beginning to end. Even if he tried his best to hide it, the man could still see the defensiveness on his face. He was a good brother who protected his sister. Niu Niu was proud when she mentioned her family, and said, my 3 brothers are all good, my parents are also good, my grandparents are also very good, and my aunt and godfather and godmother are also very good. Listening to Niu Niu talking about her family like announcing the names of dishes, the man exclaimed, wow, you have quite a lot of family members. Niu Niu couldn't help but feel sorry for the man when she heard this, and said, do you have very few family members? The man said, my father passed away early, and now there is only my mother and my sister at home, who is already married. Niu Niu felt even more pitiful when she heard this, but still asked, where is your wife? Isn't she your family member? She hasn't married me yet, but she is indeed my wife. The man said. As soon as these words came out, before Niu Niu said anything, Guyan frowned, and the young boy looked at the man with a different look, and the hand holding his sister tightened. Mr. De, don't you have a wife, but you just think you have one? Guyan asked. He wanted to pull his sister away from this man who seemed to be mentally ill on the spot. The man glanced at Guyan and said, you are too young, you don't understand. Guyan still felt that this man was not normal, and guessed that his sweetheart must have married someone else, so he went crazy. Niu Niu asked, Mister, if you can get lucky, do you want your wife to see you, or do you want her to live a good life? The child's words made the man silent. After a long time, he said, I still hope that she can be safe and happy, healthy, and worry-free. Niu Niu glanced at Guyan, then looked at her parents not far away, and whispered, then I also hope that she can be safe and happy, healthy, and worry-free. The man did not realize what a big thing Niu Niu had done. At this time, his face was full of disappointment and he said, thank you for your good words. Guyan's eyes softened a little because of the man's choice. People who hope that their wives can live well, even if they are crazy, are probably not too bad. They may be similar to the girl living in his backyard, and they are going crazy with kindness. You should be happy too. Your wife is living happily somewhere in the world, and you should be happy for her too, Niu Niu said seriously. The man forced a smile and said, you're right, I should be happy for her. A beardless man dressed as a butler walked over quickly. After taking a look at Niuniu and her brother, he bent down and whispered to the man, "Master, it's getting late. Do you think we should go back?" The man stood up, looked up at the sky, and nodded. "Little girl, your family treats you well. You are a blessed person," the man said. Niuniu straightened up and said proudly, "I am the good kid in the family. Of course, I am a blessed person." First update. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shenshen. Chapter 216. As soon as the man left, Shen Changfeng rushed out from the depths of the forest. He brought a large handful of green plums to Niu Niu. Shen Changfeng looked at the back of a middle-aged man being helped away not far away. He felt a little familiar and couldn't remember where he had seen him before. But he didn't think much about it and continued to offer treasures. "My dear, look at the green plums I picked for you. Those monks hid the plum blossoms deep in the forest, but it's not a problem for me. I have to pick up a lot of them every year and put them in bottles." Shen Changfeng's eyes bright and cheerful, as if he had done something great. Guyan frowned slightly, steeled. Shen Changxing explained, "My family does not know how much money they have to add to the temple every year for sesame oil. The group of monks actually knew that I wanted to pick it for a long time, but they did not dare to stop me for fear that my mother would run out of money for the sesame oil." Although Niu Niu felt that flowers should not be picked randomly, she was not disappointed. She happily took two and said, "Thank you, Brother Shen. The green plums are so beautiful." Shen Changfeng was very happy to see that she liked it, and said, "When the flowers in my garden are in full bloom, I will take you to see that one, too." Niu Niu's eyes were full of curiosity and she said, "I have never seen 100 flowers blooming. When I see flowers blooming, they bloom in bursts and rarely in one place. Few people in the countryside grow flowers. If they have land, they would be more willing to raise some cash crops." Shen Changfeng said, "I'll let you see enough this year, but no matter how nice my garden is, it can't compare to my uncle's garden outside the city. Unfortunately, my mother has begged him several times, but he refused to give it." Niu Niu looked at him with wide eyes and said, "You have a big garden at home, so there is no need to envy others." Shen Changfeng did not continue to struggle, but looked up at the sky and said, "It's getting late. Let's go pick up Azao. He must have been tortured by Lao Yantu, he." Niu nodded vigorously and asked again, "Brother Shen, have you finished writing your poem?" After hearing this, Shen Changfeng's face suddenly froze. When he entered the peach blossom forest, Gu Mingda suggested that he try writing a peach blossom poem, but he was so focused on stealing green plums that he completely forgot about it. When several children came to Gu Mingda, Shen Changfeng still couldn't think of a reason to prevaricate, but Gu Mingda didn't ask him and just led them down the mountain. Gu Zhao's eyes lit up when he saw his family leaving and coming back. He grabbed Lu Yu and ran away. Okay, I know my parents love me the most and will not be able to leave me here for too long. I will go back with you and study hard." Old Dr. Yan snorted coldly and said, "Go back to study and don't touch my bugs." Gu Zhao had a sad face, but he still couldn't bear to part with those bugs. He didn't know where old Dr. Yan found them, but there were many bugs of unknown species. Zhang Yuniang said, "Go back tonight and come back early tomorrow morning." The expression on Gu Zhao's face suddenly cracked. "If I can't escape, I might as well live here. The whole family is having dinner at Zhuanggai Yuanlu tonight, do you really not want to eat?" Zhang Yuniang asked. As soon as Gu Zhao heard about the food, his eyes suddenly lit up. After picking up Gu Zhao, the group returned to the city in a carriage, and the whole family went to Zhuangyuan building to have dinner. Shen Changfeng insisted on leaving regardless of Gu Zhao's pleas to stay the night, but he was still thinking about writing poems. After all, he couldn't hold it back. He stood in front of the carriage and ignored the urging of his entourage. He turned to ask, "Uncle Gu, why don't you ask me how my poem is going?" Gu Mingda said, "What do you think?" Shen Changfeng couldn't help but lower his head and said, "I was just having fun, but I didn't write a poem." "Look, you know your situation very well and you don't need me to say anything more," Gu Mingda said warmly. Shen Changfeng asked, "Why don't you reprimand me?" Gu Mingda asked back, "Changfeng, your past husband often scolded you, what do you think?" Shen Changfeng was speechless for a moment. The harder the gentleman scolded him, the less he could concentrate on studying, as if he was trapped in some kind of vicious cycle. Gu Mingda said, "Now you and I have not established a formal master-disciple status. Changfeng, you should think about it carefully. What do you want to learn from me? Also think about how you want to go in the future. Uncle Gu, are you afraid of accepting me as your disciple?" Shen Changfeng suddenly asked a strange question. Gu Mingda looked puzzled and asked, "What are you afraid of?" "I'm afraid that I won't be able to succeed and will ruin your reputation in the future." Gu Mingda reached out and patted his shoulder and said, "How old are you? Why do you worry about this? In my opinion, you have already become a talent." Faced with the doubtful look in his disciple's eyes, Gu Mingda explained, "The world's definitions of success vary widely. Some people think that a disciple is successful only when he is better than his master. Some people think that a disciple is successful only when he has achieved something. I think you are brave and responsible. You were born into a wealthy family. You could have been a playboy who committed crimes, but you took care of the young, showed compassion to others, and helped others when they needed help. This is something that many people have been unable to do for a lifetime. Possessing noble qualities. You are a rare good boy, so there is no need to belittle yourself because of some unpleasant words." When Shen Changfeng returned to the princess mansion, he still felt warm all over his body. As soon as he entered the door, before he saw his mother, he saw his father with a dark face. "Don't you know what time it is? You were out in the wild and you didn't come back until now," Shen Fuxian scolded with disgust on his face. Shen Changfeng listened to his father's scolding and asked, "Father, do you look down on me so much? If I don't come back at night, I must have done something wrong outside." Shen Fuxian didn't hesitate at all, sneered, and said, "Can you do anything good when you go out? You just eat, drink and have fun all day long, and you don't do anything serious. I have been smart all my life, why did I give birth to a useless thing like you? Why can't you learn from Chang Jun?" Shen Changfeng's eyes darkened when he heard it, but he thought about it. "You think I am inferior to Shen Changjun in every way, and think I am a disgusting playboy, but some people think I have noble qualities and am a rare good child. Did you know that I didn't come back last night?" Shen Changfeng asked. Shen Fuxian looked as if it was true, and said, "You evil creature who sleeps with flowers and willows, I will deal with you today." "Father, do I only do this kind of thing?" Shen Changfeng asked back. "You dare to talk back?" Shen Fuxian frowned. Shen Changfeng said, "Father doesn't ask questions, but if he asks someone, he will know where I went." After he finished speaking, he ignored Shen Fuxian and walked towards his yard. Nayunia was right, the one with the problem was his father, not him. Second update. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 217. Shen Fuxian saw his son ignored him, and he jumped in anxiety. "Asshole, I'm talking to you, stop right there." If it were in the past, Shen Changfeng would stand there and listen to his father's scolding, but this time he didn't want to stay any longer. It was Shen Changfeng's longtime servant who whispered, "Master, if you just run away like this, Will the prince consort punish you? Shen Changfeng shook his head and said, don't worry, he won't dare. No matter how harshly Shen Fuxian scolded, he didn't dare to do it. The princess would not agree to let him beat the child. The lights in Gu Zhao's room were on before dawn the next day. Zhang Yuniang placed a bunch of small jars bought overnight in front of Gu Zhao. I'll pack your clothes and soft things for you, and you pack your things. We'll leave for Baiyun town in a while, Zhang Yuniang said with a cold face. Gu Zhao rubbed his eyes. He wanted to stay in bed. He was so tired that he had no rest yesterday at Dr. Yan's place. He copied a bunch of books in the morning, but only one page was approved by Dr. Yan. He had to recopy the rest. It was not easy to identify medicinal materials in the afternoon. If he made a mistake, Dr. Yan would punish him with a ruler. After careful calculation, the only time he felt relaxed in the pharmacy was the half hour of feeding insects after lunch. But no matter how unwilling he was, he could only be dragged by Zhang Yuniang to kill all the insects in the room. Are you sure there are no insects? Zhang Yuniang asked with a frown. Ever since she knew that her son had the bad habit of sleeping with insects, Zhang Yuniang felt uncomfortable standing in this room, as if something was crawling on her body. Gu Zhao nodded honestly. Zhang Yuniang then packed up all Gu Zhao's clothes and soft things and organized them into a huge package. You are learning skills at your master's house, not at home. You should listen to your master in everything and be diligent. Only in this way can you be liked by others. Zhang Yuniang muttered. But Gu Zhao was only 7 years old, and these words almost went in one ear and out the other. At this time, he was only thinking, Mom, has the crazy girl gotten up? Is she in the kitchen? He was still thinking about what Nayuniu said last night to ask the crazy girl to make him a hearty breakfast. Zhang Yuniang saw that he was still a child, and knew that all her words were in vain. She sighed and softened her heart and said, she got up. She took your sister's words as nothing. How could she not get up? Gu Zhao cheered, and then rushed into the kitchen in the front yard. He saw a light there from a distance. The steamer on the pot was opened, and white steam floated in the room. Gu Zhao could already smell the mouth-watering food aroma. Lu Xiaoru sat aside to watch Gu the crazy girl, afraid that she would suddenly get up. But the crazy girl saw Gu Zhao's attitude was very friendly, and said, dumplings when you come in and noodles when you go out. If you want to go out, you should eat noodles as the staple food. I will make noodles now. You can eat something else first. Lu Xiaoru was very accustomed to the messy names that Xu said. Gu Zhao was surprised and asked, why do you call me cousin? Cousin is cousin, Xu said. Lu Xiaoru suddenly got a start and hurriedly pulled Gu Zhao and said, Zhao, go to the next door and wait. I will call you when it's ready. Gu Zhao was puzzled. Lu Xiaoru said, be good and listen. Seeing Gu Zhao go to the next door, Lu Xiaoru was relieved. Fortunately, she fooled him away. Otherwise, she would hear something like empress or princess. If the child is not careful, it would be bad if he said it outside. She couldn't help thinking that although the crazy girl only had Nayuniu in her heart, she was too crazy and still very unstable. I won't betray the princess, Xu suddenly said. Lu Xiaoru was stunned when she heard it, but looking at the angry expression on the crazy girl's face, she couldn't help feeling guilty. The cousin is the nephew of the queen, he won't harm the queen, even if he knows the queen's identity. What's the big deal? Xu said again. The guilt in Lu Xiaoru's heart suddenly disappeared again. With this messy name and trust in a 7-year-old child, Lu Xiaoru thought Xu should continue to stay in the backyard. Gu Zhao waited for a while next door, and Lu Xiaoru brought a lot of steamed snacks over. Eat slowly, it's hot. Gu Zhao's eyes were suddenly filled with food, and he didn't remember what happened just now. Xu made a table full of food. Not long after Gu Zhao started eating, other members of the Gu family also sat down beside him one after another, From the elderly Gu Laotai and Gu Laodai to the youngest Nayuniu, all rubbing their eyes to eat with him. Delicious, this is delicious, this is delicious, everyone is delicious. Gu Zhao's chopsticks never stopped. No one in the family snatched food from him, and he was the first to eat everything. Gu Zhao was so happy that tears were about to fall. Why do I have to leave home? If I stay at home, it would be so nice to eat the dishes made by the crazy girl every day. Woo woo woo. Gradually, his fake crying turned into real crying. Nayuniu hurriedly comforted him. Third brother, sister Xiuying can cook other things. When the eldest brother announces the results, I will bring a big bag for you to eat, okay? Gu Zhao's eyes suddenly lit up. My dear, you are really my good sister, I know you are the best to me. No matter how reluctant Gu Zhao was, this meal would also end. He held the small jar in his arms, and under the gaze of the family, he got on the carriage, looking back every few steps. Although Zhang Yuniang was reluctant, at this moment, she was more grateful that she had finally sent this insect king away. Go buy some realgar powder in the morning and spray it all over A Zhao's room. Forget it, buy more and sprinkle it everywhere in the house, Zhang Yuniang instructed Qi Niangzi, the housekeeper. Nayuniu looked up and said, Mom, it's okay. Third brother said that the insects in the house listen to him and won't bully the family. Zhang Yuniang thought that this kind of words was just to coax Nayuniu, and she wouldn't believe it. When she thought of the poisonous insects and scorpions her son raised, she wanted to sprinkle more realgar powder. After Gu Zhao left, the house seemed to suddenly become quiet. No one shouted or ran around the house. Gu Mingda originally assigned homework to Nayuniu. But Nayuniu ran to discuss with him, Daddy, can I do today's homework and tomorrow's homework together? I feel a little tired. Gu Mingda looked at his daughter's obedient and soft appearance, and asked gently, is it because you worked too hard yesterday and got up too early today? Nayuniu nodded. Nayuniu could have stayed up to see Gu Zhao out, but she insisted on seeing him off because of the good relationship between the brother and sister. Gu Mingda touched her little head and finally agreed. Nayuniu stayed in the room all day except for eating, and slept soundly on the bed. Zhang Yuniang was a little worried, and ran over to see her several times. Seeing that her daughter's complexion was normal and the little fish birthmark had not changed, she was relieved to confirm that the child was really just sleeping. Nayuniu made a wish for the middle-aged man yesterday. She slept all day today, but she didn't feel any discomfort, not even dizziness or headache. The little girl was confused and thought, wouldn't she get sick if she made a wish now? First update. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shenshen. Chapter 218. Nayuniu finished her homework honestly on the second day. But she made a wish in the afternoon, I hope I can eat Suiyun crisp soon. Almost as soon as she finished speaking, a guest came to the Gu family. Shopkeeper Luo came to Beijing, and he came to the door with a lot of gifts, including the Suiyun crisp that Niu Niu loved. Zhang Yuniang took out a few pieces from a bag of pastries and handed them to Niu Niu. But as soon as Niu Niu finished eating the Suiyun crispy, she felt her eyes darkening. She forced herself back to her bed and lay down. She fell asleep for half an hour before regaining her energy. The little girl pulled up her sleeves, looked at the small fish birthmark on her arm, and immediately covered her heart. It's okay, it's just a little lighter. But even so, when Zhang Yuniang helped Niu Niu take a bath at night, she still stared at the birthmark for a long time. The little girl sat in the bathtub, lowering her head and playing with the water, for fear of being noticed by her mother. Niu Niu made a small wish this time, and the changes in her birthmark were also small. Zhang Yuniang saw that her daughter seemed to have no abnormality, so she did not ask about it. She only said, Baiyun Academy has strict requirements. If I hadn't relied on my true ability, I might have passed the exam. You have to give it away in 3 months, my dear, so your elder brother can know your true strength, you know. Zhang Yuniang said this because she was afraid that Niuniu would be stupid again. Taking into account the deep love between brother and sister, she foolishly made a wish that Guyan would be admitted to Bayun Academy. Niu nodded vigorously and said, "Mom, I understand that my eldest brother is the most powerful. If he doesn't rely on his true ability, he won't feel at ease studying there." Zhang Yuniang smiled and nodded. Early the next morning, except for Gu Mingda and Gu Yan, who stayed at home to study, the rest of the Gu family went to see the location of the marinade workshop. It's a single family yard with a well in the backyard. Except that it's a little remote, there's nothing wrong with it, the person in charge of buying and selling the house said to shopkeeper Luo. Shopkeeper Luo hurried to Beijing after sorting out the affairs in Guang'an County. This time, the Gu family paid for the house in the workshop, and he just asked acquaintances from his family to help find a house. Shopkeeper Luo pointed at the Gu family and said, "Wang Ya, I can't make the decision in this matter." Even though he reminded him like this, Wang Yaran still focused his main attention on shopkeeper Luo, and was a little indifferent to the Gu family. After going back and forth, shopkeeper Luo frowned so hard that he could kill a fly. Niu stretched out her hand, pulled Zhang Yuniang's sleeve, and whispered, "Mom, I don't like it here, it's so cold here." The Gu family originally thought this place was good, but now they immediately became wary. Lu Xiru said directly to the tooth man, "Let's look at another place." Yaren was not happy, and he vaguely wanted to complain to shopkeeper Luo, "Mr. Luo, this is the most suitable place I have found according to your requirements, and the price is also cheap. It will be difficult to go to other places. Never found such a good one again." But shopkeeper Luo respected Lu Xiru very much and said, "Since shopkeeper Lu thinks it's not suitable, then go to another place. Don't worry, the money I should give you will not be less." When Yaran heard this, he was still unhappy, but in the end he took everyone to another house. It's just that this time the location is more remote, the house is dilapidated, and the asking price is not cheap. If you want to use it, you will have to spend a lot of effort to repair it. At this time, Wang Yaran was still chattering, "Third master, I told you that the house in front is the most suitable. Why don't you listen? The more you look for it, the worse it will get. You shouldn't listen to me, the words of man." Lu Xiru had often heard him say such words along the way, and her face was already very unhappy at this time, but she was concerned about shopkeeper Luo's face, so she endured it in the end. She endured it, but some people didn't. "You don't listen to your mother?" Niu asked Na Yaran. Seeing that she was a little girl, Yaran said casually, "I have always been filial, so I naturally listen to her." Niu raised her little face and looked at this person in surprise. "You yourself listen to the woman, why do you persuade Uncle Luo not to listen to the woman?" A look of embarrassment flashed across Yaran's face, and then he said, "You little kid, you are really sharp-tongued." As soon as these words came out, everyone else's expressions changed. Shopkeeper Luo, who was originally thinking of making peace, immediately turned down his face and said, "Wang Yaran, the kid is telling the truth, so why are you so aggressive?" Shopkeeper Luo almost pointed at his nose and said Wang Yaran couldn't afford it. Wang Yaran was not happy either. He had supported shopkeeper Luo all day today, but he didn't get any benefits. He didn't sell the haunted house that fell into his hands to these people. He just felt that the bad luck was getting worse. "Mr. Luo, since your guests are difficult to serve, I will simply stop serving you and take my leave." As Wang Yaran said this, he flicked his sleeves and ran away, not caring about the people behind him. Wang Ya was still thinking that this place was remote and there were many messy alleys, so maybe this group of people would get lost. It's just that his mind was so messed up that he didn't pay attention to the road under his feet. Without paying attention, he tripped over a raised stone and hit his head on the ground, face first. His skin was broken and blood flowed down. As expected, The Gu family got lost when they left the alley where the dilapidated house was. It would be great if your father came with us. He has the best memory, Zhang Yuniang sighed softly. Because it was a familiar Yaman who led the way, no one expected that this person would give up his advice before the battle, so no one would take note of the way. Shopkeeper Luo pointed in a random direction. It seems to be this way. Let's see if we can meet anyone. Everyone followed him and walked for a long time, but they couldn't get out of this maze-like alley. Because it was mid-morning, the men in the alley seemed to have gone out to work, and the women with children didn't dare to open the door when they heard strangers knocking on the door. Everyone couldn't get out for a while. I can't do it. I can't lead this way. How about changing someone? Shopkeeper Luo was a little unconfident at this time. Old Lady Gu pointed at Niu Niu and said, let Guibao lead the way. Children are the smartest. Maybe we can get out by accident. The old lady didn't let Niu Niu make a wish, but let the child point in a direction at random. Niu Niu really found the way based on her own feelings. But Niu Niu, who has always been lucky, led everyone to walk around the alley for nearly an incense stick of time, but couldn't get out. Everyone was tired and hungry, and their footsteps were sometimes light and sometimes heavy. Niu Niu also covered her stomach and was carried forward by Shopkeeper Luo. Perhaps because they were too hungry, a group of people actually had hallucinations. What a nice smell. The crowd followed the aroma and walked forward, and suddenly saw a small table at the end of the alley, and a small cart with a stove next to it. The cart was emitting bursts of hot air, and an old man with a grey beard was cooking noodles. A middle-aged man with a mustache sat at the table and waited anxiously. Shopkeeper Luo held Niu and rushed over with his last bit of strength. Noodles, hurry up and cook noodles, let's have a bowl each. The man with a mustache heard this and immediately said with a smile, Old Lu, you said I delayed your business. Look, isn't the business coming now? Old Lu, who was cooking noodles, smiled and said, Mr. Cheng is very smart. I said something wrong, you must forgive me. The man with a mustache called Mr. Cheng said proudly, I told you a long time ago that I am proficient in Xiao Lu Ren and I calculated that you will get rich today. Do you dare to say that I didn't calculate it? Second update. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 219. Old Lu Tiou hurriedly complimented him a few more times. But the old man was thinking in his heart, Mr. Cheng counted 10 times, and all 10 times were wrong. Today, when the blind cat encountered a dead mouse, he immediately started to tremble. The small table was very small, but it was equipped with 6 small mats. Mr. Cheng occupied one, and the remaining 5 were just enough for the Gu family to sit down. Shopkeeper Luo simply squatted on the ground. He gave up his seat and kept saying sorry words. This Yaman was recommended by my cousin. I didn't know he was such a guy beforehand. Fortunately, we didn't buy the house in Hongyi Lane. With his character, I don't know what problems there are in the house. Luo the shopkeeper was terrified at this time. The Luo family doesn't have much business in the capital, and his cousin has always been in charge of it, so shopkeeper Luo is not very familiar with the capital. Shopkeeper Luo, we all understand that this is not your fault, so don't keep blaming yourself for this. Mrs. Gu stepped forward to comfort her. Shopkeeper Luo sighed and said, if you are looking for a house, be careful in advance. I will ask around in the next few days to see if there are any reliable dentists. While they were talking, someone else came to the stall. He was a young man in his 20s. Cheng Xianggong, who was eating noodles, grabbed the young man and said, Little Li, I'm sure you will get rich today. If you really do get rich, why don't you treat me to noodles later? The young man couldn't help laughing when he heard this and said, "Okay, okay, thanks to your good wishes, even if I don't get rich, I will treat you to this bowl of noodles." But Xiang Gongcheng said, "I am not the kind of person who is greedy for petty gains. I will hire you when you get rich." The young man nodded helplessly. He also knew Cheng Xianggong's temperament. From the beginning to the end, he only wanted to treat the guests himself, but he did not say this to the old Lutiou who also came to do business. Cheng Xianggong turned to shopkeeper Luo again and said, "I am sitting here when you are talking, and I can't even think about not listening. This guy is also a fan. Even though he is young, he is a real person. I will tell you what kind of house you want, just tell him and he'll find the right one." Li Yaoren did not expect this unexpected surprise, and looked at the Gu family with burning eyes. Even though it was delivered to my door, shopkeeper Luo did not refuse and made his request in detail. He was still thinking about the house in Hongyi Lane and said, "Although Hongyi Lane is remote, it is close to where I live. Can you help me see if there are any similar houses there?" Li Yaoren listened to shopkeeper Luo's description and asked, "The Yaoren in front of you, is his surname Wang? Is there a big locust tree in the courtyard of the house I looked at earlier?" Shopkeeper Luo nodded. Li Yaoren said, "Fortunately you didn't buy that house." Shopkeeper Luo was shocked, "Is that house really inappropriate?" Li Yaoren sighed and said, "That is a famous haunted house in Hongyi Lane. 3 consecutive buyers lived in it and their families were ruined. Wang Yaoren was greedy for cheap and bought it at a low price, but he did not dare to live in it himself, thinking about making a fortune by reselling it." After hearing this, the Gu family all took a deep breath, and shopkeeper Luo was so angry that he could kill flies with his brows. "It's okay, okay, there's something really wrong with the house that our dear baby doesn't like," Lu Xiru muttered softly. Shopkeeper Luo nodded vigorously. He was a businessman and a very superstitious businessman. He didn't know how special Niunia was. He just thought it was a child with a bright mind, so he didn't like that house. Li Yaoren said again, "There are a lot of houses for sale in Hongyi Lane. You want to open a workshop. Wang Yaoren should not lead you here. There are no suitable houses in this place." After hearing this, shopkeeper Luo didn't understand Wang Yaoren's intention. This was all to force the Gu family to buy the house in Hongyi Lane. It just so happened that at this moment, the noodles ordered by shopkeeper Luo were delivered. Pickled pork noodles. After just one taste, everyone's eyes lit up. They haven't left the winding alley until now, and they didn't expect that this place actually hides delicious food. The pickles are crispy, the noodles are chewy, and they have some real skills. "Dad, do you make all the noodles at your home, from the pickles to the dough?" shopkeeper Luo asked. After hearing this, Lao Liudu smiled and agreed, saying, "I rolled the noodles myself, but my wife made the pickles." Shopkeeper Luo nodded and asked again, "How much do you make in a day? Can you sell them all?" Old Lutiou stretched out his palm and said with a hint of pride, "Don't think this is a small business, but my noodle stall has many regular customers. My wife and I run the stall morning, noon, and evening, and we can sell more than 200 bowls of noodles a day. A bowl of noodles sells for 5 cents, and 200 bowls cost 1 tael of silver. But noodles have a cost." Shopkeeper Luo made a rough calculation. "It contains meat, oil, pickles, and good flour. In addition to the loss of charcoal fire, the cost of a bowl may be 4 cents, and the profit of a bowl is difficult to exceed 1 cent, is a business of small profits but quick turnover. At the end of that day, I can earn at most 2 taels of silver. Excluding bad weather, such as rain and snow that prevents me from selling my stall, I can only earn no more than 6 taels of silver in a month. Even so, for ordinary people, it is enough to support their families. Old man, after a while, I am going to open a restaurant in the capital. I will give you 10 taels of silver every month. How about you go to my restaurant to cook noodles? Shopkeeper Luo asked. Lao Lutiou's noodles are indeed delicious, but there are some skills that even if he tried his best to teach his sons, they would never be able to learn them. If they hadn't been unable to help run the stall, Lao Lutiou wouldn't be a long time old and would have to continue to work hard. At this time, he listened to shopkeeper Luo's solicitation, and his old face was blank for a moment, but he quickly said, "Sir, are you kidding me? The little old man is old and can only cook noodles, but he can't stand up to you." Joke. Shopkeeper Luo didn't care about his thoughts. Many of the chefs he recruited in the restaurant used this method. "If you are willing, my father-in-law, I can give you a gift of 5 taels of silver first, and then I will come to pick you up after I have made arrangements for the restaurant. What do you think?" When old Lutiou saw the 5 taels of silver that the other party took out, all the doubts in his heart were instantly wiped away. He knew that he had really found a good customer. Who is willing to work as a stall in a restaurant if he can work stably in the wind and rain? The restaurant is not only stable and decent, but also earns more money. If his children can learn the craft, they can continue to work as a stall in the future. The customer groups of restaurants and stalls are different, so for Lao Liodu, this is a business that is sure to make money without losing money. My boss. From now on, you will be my boss, old Lutiou. Today, old Lutiou is treating me. Old Lutiou accepted the 5 taels of silver and became more generous. Mr. Cheng immediately said, "Then I'll have another bowl." A flash of physical pain flashed across Lao Liutu's face, but he still ordered another bowl of noodles for Mr. Cheng. First update. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 220. After eating noodles, Li Yaran couldn't wait to say, "I just listened to your ideas and selected 5 places. I will take you to see houses from near to far, okay?" When this was said, the Gu family naturally had no dissatisfaction. Unlike Wang Yaran's uncooperative attitude before, Li Yaran was honest and hard-working. When he was eating noodles, he had already planned which places to go. Although Li Yaran was young and had not been in this business for a long time, he was attentive. He took a group of people to see houses one by one. This house is also equipped with a well in the yard, but the only drawback is that the yard is too small and the road in front of the door is too narrow. If the car is slightly wider, it may not be able to go out. It is not convenient to transport goods out, and it is too far from your home. But the advantage is that the price is cheap, and it can barely meet your requirements. Li Yaran knew that his service objects were the Gu family, so from beginning to end, he took Zhang Yuniang and Lu Xiru's words to heart, and selected houses in strict accordance with the requirements of the two. If one place didn't work, Li Yaran would take them to the next one. After rejecting 3 places in a row, Li Yaran didn't get discouraged at all. Li Yaran even comforted them, "Today's time is too tight. Let me think about it and see if there are other suitable houses." Manager Luo also said to Zhang Yuniang and her sister, "Don't worry, just decide on a house this month." Zhang Yuniang felt a little relieved. But when they arrived at the last courtyard, it was also a house in Hongyi Lane. The house layout was slightly different from the haunted house they had seen before, but everything was complete. There is a well in the courtyard and a stone mill. This was originally a tofu workshop. But after his father passed away, the tofu made by the current head of the family was always not tasty. The business was bad, so he had to sell the house and make a living in the suburbs. Li Yaran explained in detail the reason why the owner sold the house. Confirming that it was not a haunted house, everyone nodded. Nayuni opened her arms, ran around the yard, turned around, and asked her mother with a smile, "Mom, are we going to buy this place?" Zhang Yuniang nodded and said, "If you like it, then buy it." After hearing this, Li Yaran said, "Mrs. Zhang, The reason why this place is placed last is because the owner wants a high price and he is unwilling to lower the price. Otherwise, this place would have been sold long ago. While speaking, Li Yaoren gestured a number to Zhang Yuniang. It is 20% higher than the market price. Are they short of money? Zhang Yuniang was puzzled. Li Yaoren explained, this family was born and raised in Beijing. Their ancestors were once rich. It is said that they were once the minister of the Ministry of Revenue in the previous dynasty. Unfortunately, they fell into decline after the change of dynasties and can only make a living by selling tofu. The current head of the family can't make good tofu, and he has a son who is addicted to gambling. He can't quit even after breaking an arm. This time he plans to sell the house and buy land in the countryside. He also hopes that he can quit gambling after leaving Beijing. Hearing that he is a gambler, all the Gu family members frown slightly, but there is really nothing wrong with this house. Mom, buy it. It's close to home and the road in front is wide. I like this place too. If I don't have enough money, I will pay some. I just learned a poem that says that even if all the money is spent, it will come back. Nayunia pulled Zhang Yuniang's sleeve and acted coquettishly. Zhang Yuniang had thousands of reasons not to buy it, but she only needed one reason to buy it. Nayunia likes it. Neither she nor Lu Xiru would refuse Nayunia's pleading. After hearing this, they decided to buy it on the spot. The house for opening a workshop is different from the house for living. The marinade workshop is the foundation of the Gu family now, so they must buy the house first to feel at ease. Although Ms. Gu felt sorry for the money, she also knew that the family affairs were now decided by her son and his wife. When she really bargained with the owner, Ms. Gu knew it was time for her to take action. The old lady's turbid eyes suddenly became sharp, and her picky eyes swept across the entire courtyard, picking out countless problems in a very short time. One sentence after another, the owner was forced to retreat step by step. The owner didn't even want to do business anymore, and said, if you don't want to buy it, forget it. When Ms. Gu heard this, she raised her eyelids and said, you have been selling this house for so long, and no one has bought it. If you lose me as a buyer, who can you sell it to? The owner lowered his head. The situation was similar to what Ms. Gu said. There were many people looking at the house, but not many people were really willing to buy it. But he was also anxious. What he didn't tell the broker was that his son was almost out of control. If the whole family had not been on guard, the son would have gone out to gamble during this period. If he really went to the gambling table, it would be hard to say whether the house could be saved. Old Lady Gu looked at his expression and took advantage of the victory, saying, let's be merciful and buy it. Don't you want your son to stop gambling? We can also help you think of a way. The owner of the house was excited when he heard this, and asked, do you really have a way to make my son stop gambling? Old Lady Gu said, it depends on whether you are willing to give it up. The owner of the house shook his head vigorously and said, he is my only child. I can't bear to use two cruel methods. Old Lady Gu said, do you have grandchildren? The owner of the house sighed and said, how can he get married? The old lady said, find him a wife. The owner of the house said, a girl from a good family, everyone knows his situation. I can only go out of town to find someone. Old Lady Gu felt that there was no need to harm a good-tempered girl in this situation, and said, you go find a girl with a tough temper and explain your family's situation to her. For your son, you can even find a widow and lure her with money. Think of a way to leave him a descendant first. After leaving a descendant, if you can be cruel, break his legs. If you can't be cruel, force him to farm every day. The owner said, my son is so delicate, how can he farm? Then you can bear to see him lose his hands and feet in a gambling spree. How can you be so cruel as a father? Old Lady Gu accused on the spot. Homeowner. The house was finally sold, and the price didn't drop too much, but it was much cheaper than before. Grandma is really amazing. Every time you take action, you can save a lot of money for the family. Nayuni looked at Old Lady Gu with admiration. Old Lady Gu smoothed her clothes with dignity and said, I have lived for most of my life and followed you to the capital. I will definitely help you gain a foothold in the capital. When Old Lady Gu said this, she completely forgot how scared she was to go to the city. On the other hand, Li Yaoren said, Old lady, you have a quick mind, rich experience, and a sharp tongue. If you were not short of money, I would have asked you to help me. The second update.